Ouais. Ok. Merci, merci de me recevoir, hein. Donc, on va partir sur 40 minutes. Je vais sûrement dépasser, je ferai de mon mieux. Du coup, je vais passer en anglais. C'est plus pratique pour moi. So I'll be talking about automatic curriculum learning for developmental machine learners. Same title as the PhD I am currently finishing. And the idea is to get more details about this set of tools that are automatic curriculum learning methods that have been, among many other researchers, trying to apply to what we call developmental machine learners, but just agents leveraging multiple developmental tools to organize their learning odyssey, let's say. Okay, in terms of content, I'll start with a bit of background on human learning, developmental robotics, and RL, deep RL. Then I'll focus on automatic curriculum learning, try to define it and overview a bit what's the current literature. And I'll finish with a description of a few ACL works from the team. So in terms of background, when we build autonomous agents, the question directly comes: how do we humans and animals learn? Well, there is no holistic theory reaching a scientific consensus, but there are influential perspectives. For example, the Piagetian view, which basically states that our cognitive complexity comes from a coupling of biological maturation and active exploration. And in some sense, the child is a little scientist, which selects and conduct its own experiments to refine its knowledge of the world. And so these experiments are self-selected without the intervention of a social peer, so they are intrinsically motivated. It's something that has not only been developed by Jean Piaget. For example, Robert White developed the notion of intrinsic motivation. He said it's something component parallel to primary drives. It's not just we are not exploring environment just to satiate our hunger or thirst. We are constantly learning to interact efficiently with the environment. It's what he calls competence. We seek to improve our competence. It's related to also Daniel Berline's theories. He rather talks about curiosity. Humans and animals are being curious. They are seeking intermediate arousal, intermediate levels of novelty, complexity, change. Don't hesitate to ask questions if you have any that comes to mind. So then developmental robotics has been inspired a lot by these theories. And the objective of this AI field is to build autonomous robots on one side, but also to study developmental theories, try to model them and put them, test them, whether they hold in real scenarios. Well, a good source of inspiration to any computer scientist is Alan Turing, but in terms of developmental robotics, it is a great source of inspiration related, especially related to this quote from his 1950 paper, which states basically that if you want to do an adult mind, maybe you should start from a child mind and give it the appropriate course of education. That's this idea of developmental robotics. And more precisely, it has a few important pillars. Learning must be embodied, must be intrinsically motivated, and must be incremental. So embodied because there is a developmental roboticists believe there is a strong coupling between the brain and the body, that they reciprocally influence each other's. And we talk about intrinsic motivation. And then this notion of incremental is this learning step-by-step idea, which is curriculum learning. That is believed to be very important. And I won't go into details, but there are a lot of works in developmental robotics since the end of 1990s, beginning of 2000s. They used a lot of robotic platforms. So the Cog robot, the iCub is quite famous. Here they use it for tool use. the weird Leonardo robot that has been used by the MIT here for social referencing. So yeah, interesting, lots of interesting works. Then more an older field, reinforcement learning, that we could say it's more application oriented. And it's basically how to artificially create trial and error learning. It has inspirations like the ones from developmental robotics. Maybe a more classic one for RL is Thorndike's, Edward Thorndike's psychologist, which theorized this the law of effect, this idea of reinforcement learning. You do more often what is followed by pleasure and less often what is followed by pain. He used this puzzle box experiment in his 1911 article, I believe, to show that. So the cat is trapped in a box and he learns to escape, and he repeatedly put it in this box. Because when the cat is out of the box, he gets food and he's free, he likes it. And so throughout trials, he learns to more efficiently get out. So that's basically reinforcement learning. It has been a while since someone transferred it into a working agent. So there is this, I won't go into details, but there is this 1933 experiment, machine by Thomas Ross, some kind of maze solver machine with a probing arm that was able to efficiently get out of a maze and remember its path upon successive trials. So first reinforcement learning machine, I added the link in the bottom of the slide. It's interesting to see how they talk about this new thinking machine. And so usually reinforcement learning, now it's a well-established field, and interactions are usually framed as a MDP. So a Markov decision process. So a task is it's an agent which acts in an environment. He sends actions, he observes the states and collects rewards, and they are defined by this set of variables. So the state space, action space, transition function, the reward function that conditions how do you get reward, and the initial state distribution, where do you start interaction. Usually it's approached as an episodic problem. So you have a fixed number of interaction steps, and then you restart interactions periodically. Episodic Markov decision processes. So the objective for the policy pi is to maximize rewards. And a note that will be useful later on is that so when you try to master multiple MDPs, you are doing multitask, and there is some specific case of multitask which is called multi-goal. So a goal in RL is a specific objective to perform in an environment. So for example, you have a maze, and in this maze that can be defined by an MDP, you can have multiple goals, multiple end locations you would like to reach. These are goals. So it is formalized often by adding a goal space variable to the Markov decision process. And so given these definitions, a set of goals can be understood as a particular set of tasks. They are identical in all aspects of their MDPs, apart from their goal space J. And the goal conditions the reward function. If you want to go to the top right corner of the maze, you will get reward. The reward function will adapt to that, and you get reward from going to this direction only. And nowadays, we are using deep reinforcement learning. So that is, we are combining reinforcement learning algorithms with deep neural networks that are able to approximate complex functions, that are able to parse raw inputs, high dimensional raw inputs. And in practice, this allows to have many applications. So I'll go into details later when I will overview automatic curriculum learning, but here you can see that you can learn efficient video games policies. For example, you can learn to play Montezuma with deep reinforcement learning from pixels only. You can learn complex locomotion skills, robotic manipulation in real world and in simulation, and many other things that I won't talk about. You can use RL in finance and so on. And an interesting question in RL and deep RL is how to learn multiple tasks. How do you learn a policy that is robust, that can generalize to multiple or potentially never seen MDPs environments? And here, one important aspect of my thesis and of this presentation is to say that automatic curriculum learning can help. So let's talk about automatic curriculum learning. Then first, why automatic? So curriculum learning is having this set of tasks and this sequence of learning tasks, and you focus on them. But here we say automatic curriculum learning because acquiring, we could write down the specific curriculum for our agent for each environment, but that takes time. This is costly and it does not transfer well to new learning scenarios. And as we discussed about the intrinsic motivations of humans, it's well, we are intrinsically motivated and we don't always need expert guidance. For example, here this child is playing without expert guidance. He designed his own expert curriculum. So looks like it can work, and it is being used by humans. This idea is not new. There has been works on curriculum learning, old works in, for example, Ishkai in 1985, where they show they use learning schemes. That's how they call it at this point. And basically, they train for a cart pole balancing task. They show that they first train on longer and lighter pole, and then switch to environments with heavier and shorter poles, and show that it helps to go step by step into a learning curriculum. There are also other early works like Schmidhuber's Artificial Curiosity, where they show that he has a neural network learning a model of the world, and it's better at learning its model if it focuses on unpredictable areas of the space that are deemed as unpredictable using some kind of curiosity mechanism. And there is also in 2007 from Pierre-Yves Oudeye, so Flower's team, this work on using learning progress to shape developmental trajectories, so work from the developmental robotics side. So let's try to define ACL. So we'll focus on ACL for deep reinforcement learning, but it more or less applies to any autonomous learning agent. And we can say that ACL for DeepRL is a family of mechanisms that automatically adapt the distribution of training data by learning to adjust the selection of learning situations to the capabilities of DeepRL agent. So long sentence, but basically we have a teacher ACL algorithm and a learning student DeepRL agent. And the idea that we can efficiently train the student by adapting the tasks that are proposed to him based on his abilities. And hopefully, the goal is that compared to randomly giving tasks, for example, the automatic curriculum learning strategy should bring better sample efficiency and asymptotic performances compared to random curriculum for the learner. And so the ACL algorithm can be defined as a function D, which given a history of past interaction with the student, outputs a new task at each new episode for the student. And the task is selected from a task space. It can be just a task set of a task to do, or it can be a continuous task space, so an infinite number of tasks. And well, if we consider the continuous version, the objective is to maximize over the target set of tasks the performance, the post-training performance of the student. So the performance of the student after following his learning curriculum. And all the problem in ACL is that this target set of tasks, well, it's hard to optimize for directly because you optimize for post-training performance. And sometimes you don't even know the target task set. For example, if you consider an open-ended learning scenario, you don't know what your agent will face in the future. So that's why ACL methods look for surrogate objectives to organize the task sampling process. So now let's look at a bit some of the ACL methods that are in the literature. Or rather, let's try to classify them and have a broader high-level perspective. So we've done a survey which tried to do that, and we divided the ACL literature using 3 dimensions. So why is ACL being used? There are various non-exclusive motivations. So it can be to solve a very hard task. It can be to train an agent able to master multiple tasks, or it can be for open-ended exploration, so on. And then there is another dimension. What is the ACL algorithm in control of? Is it trying to adapt the initial state the agent is is starting on? Sorry. Or is it learning to adapt the reward function? We'll see that all aspects of the MDP can be controlled by the ACL algorithm. And finally, what is the surrogate objective being used? For example, in the team, we are studying a lot how learning progress can be used as a surrogate objective for automatic curriculum learning. So I won't go into details, but we made this big table of current works in ACL and try to classify them along these 3 dimensions. You have kind of 2 main types of automatic curriculum learning. We will focus on the first one, which is the classical one of what we call data collection ACL. So basically what I said earlier, an automatic curriculum learning method, which selects the tasks proposed to the learner. So selects the exercises that will be proposed. And the other kind of ACL is data exploitation ACL. It's basically specific case of for off-policy learning methods. So there are deep reinforcement learning and reinforcement learning methods actually that works in 2 steps. They collect experience on one side, and then to learn, they consider the full history of interactions, and they decide which one to learn from. So usually they design it by random, so there is no curriculum, but you can apply curriculum here by focusing on specific data samples. For example, you focus on experience data, which was surprising. So we won't go into details about that. We'll focus on a classical ACL. So what, given this dimension, what does ACL can control? So if you consider an agent, a student, an ACL algorithm can be applied to control the initial state distribution, so where the agent should start given a specific task. So that's, for example, what's being used in this paper from Florenza and colleagues, where they have a robotic agent learning to put this object into the pole. And they show that using automatic curriculum learning to first focus on episodes where the robots start close to the pole, and then later on, once this is mastered, they focus on robots that are episodes where the agent starts far away from the pole. They show that they are able to efficiently learn. So the curriculum allows to focus on easy tasks first, and then focus on harder tasks. So that's one way to apply ACL to control the initial state distribution. It can also be used to select which goal the agent should follow, the DeepRL student should follow. For example, that's what has been done in the Curious architecture from the team, where there is an agent which selects using automatic curriculum learning which goal it should focus on, and more specifically which object it should play with. So should I try to reach a specific end effector position with my arm, or should I try to reach a specific cube, orange cube position or blue cube position? The ACL method selects which goal should be targeted by the DeepRL student. An ACL method can also work at the reward level. So shaping the reward such that learning is made easier. For example, in the infamous Montezuma game from Atari 2060, it's very hard to get positive reward for humans, and even harder for deep reinforcement learning agents. And to help the learner, there has been methods, ACL methods, that complements the classical reward with a bonus exploration rewards. So in practice, they modify the reward function of the task by adding these bonus rewards. And for example, in this exploration by random network distillation, they encourage the learner to find new visual observations. So it pushes him to discover new rooms and go on in the exploration. And they show that it helps learning. And there is also, we'll talk a bit more about that in the ACL works I'll present, but there is also environment generation. So you can, if you have a procedural generation available and accessible, you can figure out, select which environment configuration the agent should train on. And so that's, for example, what has been used in the famous OpenAI paper about solving Rubik's Cube with a robot hand. So they show that in simulation, they have a parametric procedural generation allowing them to create various scenarios of Rubik's Cube solving. So bigger.
Si tu as des questions, tu m'envoies un mail. OK. OK.
Bigger and. Sorry.
Olivier, ton micro est ouvert. Pardon.
It's okay. It's okay. Should have ignored. So yes, as I said, you can build. So there are multiple environment configuration, and the ACL algorithm can be used here to navigate within these specific configurations because some are easy, some are not, and so to efficiently learn, you have to focus on the easy ones. And they show, by the way, that doing this, they are able to, in a zero-shot way, to transfer their learn policy to a real-world robotic hand. So by training on a diversity of environments, they learn a robust policy able to transfer to a never seen before task, which is solving the Rubik's Cube in a real-world environment. And finally, for environments where there are multiple agents, for example, in Go, there is one kind of automatic curriculum learning which is based on controlling the opponent, so the transition function in some sense, the opponent in an environment. So, for example, in Go, in their AlphaGo system, they train against themselves, and it's through this it creates an implicit curriculum where the opponent gets better and better and shape the learning trajectory of the agent. So that's it for the overview in terms of what is controllable. We can look at what.
Remy,
Yes.
Maybe just some question. You said we can ask on the go.
Sure.
Just can you just tell more about what is goal generator exactly doing? Is it like changing the reward, or I mean, when you use goal generator, you change the goal that need to be obtained, but it means that you are changing how the reward is computed as well, isn't it?
Yes. It's the controlling goals and controlling rewards is quite similar, but there are so the thing is you can control rewards in environments without goals. Like in Montezuma, you have no goal. It's always maximize reward, but you complement it with intrinsic exploration bonuses and so on. But in the case of goal generator, you select a goal and yes, it changes the reward, but it's a byproduct.
Okay, so it means that when you use goal generator, it means that your agent will learn to do something, but the reward will change later on, and with the same policy, you will.
So you actually in conditions where you consider goals, you usually learn goal conditioned agents. So agents that are given not only the input of the environment, but also the goal they are required to target. So that's how they deal with these changing reward issues. They know the goal they want to focus on.
So the goal is part of the state, so that
yes.
the agent can account, for instance, for the complexity of the task. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
No problem. So yes, let's go to the other. Yes, another dimension is what is the ACL using as a surrogate objective. And so the question is, how does it define an interesting task? And so a good approach that works quite well and is quite simple is to focus on tasks of intermediate difficulty, meaning that you consider a reward range for which you say, okay, this is intermediate difficulty, so you need to predefine it. But if you do it well, then your learner will focus on this range, and which will correspond to tasks that are not too easy or not too hard. So that's used in this reverse curriculum paper, but that's also what's used in the Rubik's Cube experiment. They focused on simulation of the robotic hand that falls in the predefined reward range. So it's quite efficient, but it requires prior knowledge. And one downside is that you can get stuck in tasks of intermediate difficulty in which agent cannot improve. So you always get the same reward, and it always remains an interesting task, although you are never progressing. And that's why in the team we like learning progress, because you escape from this issue. And basically, learning progress is the derivative of competence, of performance. So if you take an hypothetical set of 5 tasks, you see easy one, medium ones, and so on. If you get an agent learning this task, you get these performance curve profiles. And by taking the derivative with some randomness of these performance curves, you can derive learning progress-based curriculum. So here, if the agent would follow these learning progress values, he will focus on the easy task, and then later on the medium one, the hard one, and you see that there is no learning progress almost detected for the red task, and not at all for the purple task, which are unlearnable tasks. So this means following learning progress allows to avoid focusing on unlearnable tasks, because you do not detect progress, so you just forget about them. And so here is one example of work where they use learning progress so to decide on which levels of Sonic some Sonic environments to focus on. So they have a discrete set of environments. They measure learning progress, and they are able to derive a curriculum from that. And so when we'll see one work we've done in the team was to try to apply learning progress to continuous set of tasks. So here there is a discrete set of levels, but there are new problems when you consider a continuous task space. So there are many other surrogate objectives. For example, in self-play, so this kind of it's what we call a kind of adversarial or reward maximization. You're trying to get better, and by being paired with your adversary, that's how you create this curriculum. There is also surprise, but also reward. Just you maximize the reward. Can be also energy. For example, you measure how much objects moved in the scene, and that's how you derive some kind of notion whether what you did, the task or the goal you wanted to perform was interesting. There's also diversity, so on. I see that time is running, so I need to be but yes, we are done here. So ACL, yes, can be implemented in many ways for various purposes. And let's now look at a few works from the team. So I'll pick 3. So the first one I did at the beginning of my PhD is not about deep reinforcement learning. It was a kind of a preliminary step to understand how learning progress-based systems can shape curriculum, can shape learning. And it was applied to this Minecraft environment where you have So it's a multi-object scene, and the agent can walk around and eventually detect and grab a pickaxe and a shovel. The shovel is a useless tool. The pickaxe, on the other hand, can be used to break blocks. The blocks, if you break them, you can access the cart and play with the cart by pushing it left or right. So it's kind of a weird playground. And the idea is to study the question how to explore a complex multi-object environment without intrinsic rewards. How do you use intrinsically motivated methods to learn well, to get competence, as Skeeter put it, White put it? How do you learn possible interaction in the environments? It's a work related to this robotic experiment. Probably you've seen it somewhere from Sébastien Forestier. It's part of the same publication. And so the approach we are studying in both environments is active model bubbling. It's what we call an intrinsically motivated goal exploration process, quite self-explanatory. We choose goals and in an intrinsically motivated way, and we use that to explore our surroundings. So AMB is not a deep RL agent. It's a population-based approach. It grows a set of policies that are experts at reaching specific goals. In my case, I used small neural networks. They are not trained through gradient-based optimization, but they are mutated. We add a Gaussian noise to their parameters to grow the population of policies. AMB is also modular. So it requires a set of unlabeled goal spaces. So you give it the dimensions of the goal spaces of each object, and then it uses learning progress estimates to figure out whether an object is interesting or is it only a distractor, and to organize exploration. And so basically the interaction, I'll try to overview the interaction pipeline. So first you have a learning progress based goal selection. So for example, you decide you want to play with a pickaxe, and then you select a goal, a specific goal for this object. In our case, we just randomly sample a goal in the goal space. And for the pickaxe, the goal space is a specific end position to reach. Given this goal, we query our population of policies to try to use a policy who reached who was able to reach an outcome to produce an end state of the episode that is close to the goal we are following. So we are assuming a goal is a state to achieve related to a specific object, so bringing the pickaxe to a specific position. And so we pick the most suited policy we have, and either we exploit, we use it directly to reach our goal, or we mutate it. We add the Gaussian noise, and hopefully we'll find a better policy able to better reach the goal we are targeting. And then in either way, we launch this policy and we observe its the outcome, the episodic end state. And then we either, if we exploit, we refine, we look at this outcome, we look at the fitness, the performance we obtained for reaching the goal we wanted to obtain, and update the learning progress estimate for the related object. So if this time again we manage to improve our performance at bringing the pickaxe at a specific location, learning progress will keep increasing for this object. But if we are always as good as in any other prior attempts at doing a pickaxe goal, the learning progress will decrease. And if we were in the mutate case, well, we add this new policy outcome pair to the population. So this creates this intrinsically motivated goal exploration process. And when we apply to our Minecraft environment, we can follow learning progress. If we follow learning progress estimations, it creates a curriculum where the agent first focus on the agent goal space, so reaching a specific position with the agent, and then the shovel, the pickaxe, then it discovers the blocks, and finally the cart. And we show in this article that doing this kind of exploration is better than randomly exploring goal spaces, because you avoid focusing on distracting goal spaces, and you better allocate your resources, and this leads to improved exploration performances. And yes, maybe I could skip it. I'll just put it, but it's I did a video of the learning agent, which first is getting stuck in the water holes, but after a lot of interactions, it managed to discover the objects. And for example, here we ask it to get the pickaxe, to break blocks. It can move the cart left and right. Basically, the AMB exploration allowed to learn all possible interactions. So AMB is nice, but it is modular, so it requires a predefined object partitioning. And what if the object set is evolving, so you can't predefine it? And what if you consider locomotion, as in the other experiments we'll see? It cannot apply easily. And also it is population based, so it's limited by memory. You cannot grow indefinitely the set of the population of policy. And it can have issues in terms of inference time, because before an episode, you need to figure out which policy to use. And so in our case, we do a nearest neighbor on the space of policies and so on, so it can take time, compared to a deep reinforcement learning algorithm, which just do a forward pass of the state and let's go. So it can have some issues at inference time. And also at the end, it's a population-based approach, so you get a set of fragile goal experts policies. You don't have a single deep reinforcement learning agent able to handle multiple scenarios. So among other things, that's what motivated us to study learning progress-based approaches for deep reinforcement learning students. In a second work with this very long title, let's not care about that. But basically, the idea was, how do we apply automatic curriculum learning in a continuous task space? So if you have a space here, for example, of locomotion tasks, so the agent must come cross these stumps. If you have a complex task space, procedurally generated, how do you detect interesting subspaces that are feasible for the given learner? And how do you do so without expert knowledge on the learner, such that if you have other agents with different abilities, well, you can your ACL algorithm can adapt to them. How do you do so in a black box manner, in some sense? So we defined this black box teacher-student framework in this project, where there is a black box DeepRL student trying to learn what is being given to, and there is this teacher algorithm, which is only based on observing the episodic rewards of the DeepRL agent. It is adapting the task that are being proposed to the agent. It is performing ACL as we discussed earlier. And so here, the new thing is that we consider a black box scenario, and we consider complex task spaces. Because it is black box, we don't know the abilities of the student. So for the student, the task space may contain unfeasible subspaces. It could, regardless of the student, it could have irrelevant dimensions if the procedural content generation is complex. And it could have nonlinear difficulty gradients. And so to do that, we designed the LP-GMM algorithm. I won't really go into details, but the intuition is that you consider absolute learning progress. So learning progress, as we discussed, but absolute, we had absolute because we consider learning regress, negative learning progress, as valuable, because your DeepRL student, if he experiences negative learning progress, it means he's regressing. It means he's forgetting some tasks. So you need to focus on this. That's why we use absolute learning progress, and we use Gaussian mixture models. We'll see after, but basically the idea is to, because you no longer have a discrete set of objects on which to track learning progress. You have a continuous space. You have an infinity of tasks. So you need to define learning progress for subspaces. So our approach is based on creating a bandit, considering a bandit algorithm which is dynamic and is fit and fits on subspaces of the task space and assign them a specific learning progress value. And once you have that, once you have subspaces with specific learning progress values, well, you can enroll the learning progress approach. And yeah, okay, I'll have to skip this, I think, but basically that's what our ALP-GMM teacher does. It uses Gaussian mixture models to fit in the space learning progress estimates and then focus on promising subspaces. And basically, we show that it allows to train efficiently multiple kinds of students, from short ones to big ones. So it's a black box approach. And we also test it on a more complex environment with abstract stumps and show that it can outperform the random approach that you can see in gray, so randomly proposing tasks. And so ALP-GMM in blue is better able to learn the task space. So ALP-GMM allows agents to generalize to diverse obstacles. And with random training, sometimes it works, but often you don't get very meaningful results because you waste your training time. So I see that I'm more or less out of time. I'll do in 2 minutes this one. It's just a follow-up work where we designed a benchmark for automatic curriculum learning in DeepRL, because currently the ACL field is a mess, including for us. But I mean, every approach, since it is quite new ACL for DeepRL, every approach is doing its own thing, and we don't compare to every other ACL conditions. We don't have the same test beds. We don't have the same expert knowledge requirements. So it's hard for someone who just wants to figure out a new ACL approach to use. It's hard to figure out their differences. So that's why we designed this Teach My Agent benchmark. Basically, we re-implemented and modified in a single API recent ACL approaches. We feature 2 SOTA state-of-the-art deep reinforcement learning students, and we feature multiple environments. So the StumpTracks environment I talked about, but also this complex parkour environments with many ways to complete a task with a 6-dimensional task space. So a complex space of tasks, so a complex teaching problem. And we feature multiple embodiments such that there are multiple teaching challenges, so that we can test whether an approach is good at training all of them rather than just good at training a specific kind of embodiment, which is not desirable for ACL algorithms. And we designed two types of experiments: a global performance assessment using a hard task and a skill-specific assessment. So using the StumpTracks we used in the ALP-GMM paper to derive a skill-specific test, like we increase the task space with unfeasible tasks, or we increase it with trivial tasks, and we see how ACL algorithm can adapt to that. And so using this, we launched a large-scale experiment to kind of get the DNA of each ACL algorithm and compare them between each others. Well, we got interesting. We have a bias. we did the benchmark, but the ALP-GMM algorithm and other expert knowledge-free methods were quite competitive compared to methods relying on expert knowledge. So that's pretty much it for this Teach My Agent benchmark. It's version 1.0. We should add more environments, new ACL teachers. And just to finish, I would like to mention this related outreach project that we presented at the Village des Sciences. It's an interactive in-browser demonstration accessible currently at this link. You can access it easily. I'll put the link in the description. You can draw your own parkour environments and try our pre-trained agents to see if they can manage it. It's quite. It was. I mean, kids like it. That's what I can say from the capsules. So thank you. Sorry for being a bit out of time. You have the web demo link and the thesis manuscript if you want to have more details.
No problem for the time, Rémi, and thank you again. So Xavier and Philippe left us because they had some other meetings to attend, I guess.
Sure.
Do we have some question, maybe? So you can open microphones, raise your hand, write in the chat. Or I will ask some myself. Okay, so first you answered one of my questions about the benchmarks. So do you expect it to be about Teach My Agents? I mean, to be adopted by the community, so that just like, you know, the OpenAI gyms maybe becomes some kind of standard. Yes.
Yes.
But that's
If
the
we
goal.
were DeepMind or OpenAI, I would say yeah, sure. But that's the goal. But yeah, it's quite hard to say, hey, use my benchmark, please. That's why we are still working on it. To, for example, I'll be starting to work on maybe trying to integrate ProcGen into the benchmark. I don't know if you know about ProcGen, but basically it's a set of procedurally generated Atari-like environments.
Okay.
So a different kind of automatic curriculum learning challenge. So, but this is done by OpenAI maybe. Forgot. But yeah, I mean, so to answer your question, we would love to that Teach My Agent is used and a lot in the community, but we need to be realistic. Everyone will do whatever they like, but
Okay.
it's there.
Okay, but that was the goal. It's not only for
Yeah,
you
yeah.
to compare, but it's available. Okay.
Mm.
Okay, one other question. So, I mean, I have 2-3 questions maybe, and I think I will not go. I will not ask question after 2, let's say, so everyone is on schedule. About the agents, what agents do you typically use for training? Like,
You mean
I
the
guess
DeepRL architecture?
yes.
So during most of my thesis, I worked with Soft Actor Critique.
Okay.
So I don't know if you know this one. It's quite a classical one on off-policy actor critique architecture that is quite robust for a deep
Okay.
reinforcement learning agent. And in the Teach My Agent benchmark, we've also done tests with the PPO, so proximal policy optimization. So this time a non-policy algorithm, which is quite good as well.
Okay, so for you, the impact on the agents you choose is does it matter that much for you, or
The DeepRL underlying DeepRL
yes,
student.
yes, of course. We can imagine that this has a huge impact on the results, isn't it?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. We don't in our algorithm we don't assume. Well, it entirely impacts the results in terms of what will be the policy learned. If you use a bad learning algorithm, it won't work. But I believe at least for the few algorithms we tried, the performance gains of automatic curriculum learning are they are shared between the reinforcement learning methods.
Okay, but what I mean is not bad, but classical ones like soft actor critiques, TRPO, or
Yeah,
even
I mean, we
PPO and
haven't
so.
tried.
Yeah.
I would expect them probably to reach lower performances, but still benefit from automatic curriculum learning.
Okay. You and I wanted, yes, you mentioned regression at some point, like the students can forget and regress.
Yeah.
Do you consider backtracking as well, or isn't it part of the method? I mean, going back to a former state of a student.
Oh, yeah, resetting the student.
Mm.
No, that's actually one of our assumptions. We don't assume that we can reset the student. That would be one way to avoid forgetting, but that's something a bit more involved to handle forgetting. But in the meta, I did not talk about it, but we worked on a meta automatic curriculum learning. So that is you have multiple students. How do you teach them sequentially, efficiently? So how do you share information between them? And we show actually that we can use this kind of approach for a single student, which we restart. So basically, to link with your question, we have experiments where we show that we can first train an agent with automatic curriculum learning, and then we restart it, we reinitialize his state, and retrain it with learned priors from the first training, and we show that we reach improved performances. It's
Okay.
a bit of tough topic, but an example of using resets in our work.
Okay, thank you. And you also, I think Pierre mentioned a theory for humans. It was called optimal flow or something like that. Like,
Yeah, theory of flow from this horrible to pronounce psychologist
Yes, I don't.
Friedrich Jansky.
Yes, it was
So I'm sorry.
Okay, I think I think I remember something similar.
Yeah.
Is there a good book about
Theory of
intrinsic
flow.
motivation, theory of flow? I mean, among others that you can mention. Just asking by chance if there is something synthetic.
I'm not out of the blue like that. Not
Okay,
really,
I ask
but
because I think
yeah.
it can be interesting as well for teaching, like with students. And,
Yeah. That's a good point.
okay, don't
If
hesitate
send you something.
to send by email later if you have something. I'm interested. Maybe
Yep.
I'm interested in reading such a book. Okay, thank you very much, Rémi.
Yes.